This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome to the Fan Reporter Show, made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and joining me today is Andrew's going to give us this week's topics.
We're talking about the biggest news in Detroit in maybe a while, and that's Wayne Ellington. No? Is that... All right, no, okay. We're talking about Matthew Stafford. And of course, we're talking about Matthew Stafford. Let's get into it. It's a fan report.
If you're all aboard the Pistons tank train, choo-choo, then Wayne Ellington is quite literally your worst nightmare.
I hate the man right now.
Hey, he's bringing out some good trade value.
There's that. As long as we move him, though.
Yeah, I trust
knowing Troy Weaver though.
Yeah, I trust Troy Weaver to be able to move him. He seems like a wheeling and dealing kind of guy. Obviously, we're here to talk about the biggest news, the biggest trade news in Lions recent history. This is pretty much the biggest trade news we've had ever in our lifetime as Lions fans. Matthew Stafford traded the Rams for a 2022 first-round pick, a 2023 first-round pick, a 2021 third-round pick, and Jared Goff. Honestly, like, where to start with this, looking at Jared Goff in particular, like, yes, his contract is bad. You basically, in all reality, looking at the trade, you pretty much got Matthew Stafford for a 2022 first-round pick from the Rams and a third-round pick this year, and you got Jared Goff, and in return, they also gave you a 2023 first-round pick. So because his contract is abysmal.
That's one way to look at it.
I mean, but in all reality, you're looking at a stopgap, and this is the situation that I pitched multiple weeks in a row where I was saying, bring in a guy like Sam Darnold, bring somebody in to give him a 1 or 2 year tryout. They're going to suck anyways. And if he works out, there's your quarterback. If he doesn't, well, you're probably picking high in the draft anyways. Mm-hmm. So Jared Goff is better than any of the names I mentioned.
I was going to say, would you rather have Goff or Darnold?
I'll take Goff. Like, there's hope that he could be there's hope that he could return to his Pro Bowl status under Sean McVay, but under Dan Campbell this time. Jared Goff is not the worst quarterback situation you can be in. Like, is he turnover crazy? Yes, but he's also got a lot of QB wins, second most in the league over the last 4 years behind only Tom Brady. So, like, there are some positives to look at, and you can get rid of him after 2 years for $0 against dead cap. Like, that's a positive. Now, there's still $58 million guaranteed, so you still got to pay him. It just doesn't count against your cap. But either way, there's positives to look at with this trade. There's a lot of positives to look at, and in all reality, it probably was the best offer on the board for Lions, and we'll get into the other offers that were out there, along with some other conversations as well, and one of the reasons I am pivoting on Kenny Golladay and his status. But there's a lot to look at, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the trade as well.
Real quick, before I give my thoughts, what's your opinion on the people that say Goff is as good, if not better, than Matthew Stafford?
I'm going to disagree. He's only younger.
Disagreement.
He's equally as durable. I think Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback than Jared Goff, though.
Yeah, you got to compare the situations. Like, I mean, I don't think there's much better situation than what Goff had in LA. You have one of the best units in the NFL. You have two really good receivers in Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. This year, you had a really effective running back behind you in Cam Akers. I mean, there's not much more you can ask for there. But in terms of my reaction to the trade, I'll give you my actual reaction to the trade. When the news hit on Saturday night, I had a cousin who came into town, and a few of my cousins were getting together just to see him for a bit. And we had like music blast over the speakers at my cousin's apartment, and the trade notification came through to my phone, and I like immediately jumped up and I just like yelled for everyone to shut up and turn the music off. We have a trade. And like everyone, like as soon as I said we have a trade, it felt like everyone immediately knew what I was referring to. Like everyone knew it was Stafford. And then I announced the trade, I announced what the deal was, and it went like dead quiet for like a good like 3 to 5 seconds. And all of a sudden, like one of my cousins goes, "Holy shit, that was a good trade!" And then everyone jumps up and just starts cheering. Like no one expected a good trade from Matthew Stafford, and we actually got one. So. And I'm on the boat of, I agree that I think it was a fantastic trade, and I don't think you could ask for much better value because, or talking to you outside of the show, we talk about what kind of value you were looking for Stafford when you had brought up believe it was a Colts offer of multiple.
I think it was the Niners' initial reported offer of 2 seconds and 2/3.
Yeah. And I told you I'm running this like a nightclub. My first round pick's my cover charge. Like that's what I need just to start the conversation. So I'm excited that we got 2, not just 1. So yeah, I'm really happy about it.
I mean, I'm extremely happy about it as well. Like, we got 2 first-round picks for Matthew Stafford, when in all reality, we weren't expecting anywhere close to that. We were expecting maybe 1 first-round pick. No, I mean, it's not a first-rounder this year. It's not like a top 10 pick. These first-round picks are probably back end of the first, no doubt, over the next couple of years. But pairing it with your pick, the thing it gives the Lions the most is flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's something that they didn't have prior. So
flexibility is the key word with this trade. Having 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick, that you have 5 first-round picks in the next 3 years, and you can basically do whatever you want at that point. You can get whoever. You can make a myriad of different trades. You can really have a wealth of options at people you can draft. I mean, flexibility is the key word with this trade, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got a ton of flexibility here. You have room to move up, down. Like, it doesn't. What it does is it doesn't. Like, what this trade allows the Lions to do is not necessarily have to zero in on taking a quarterback in this year's draft.
Yeah.
It doesn't force their hand. It allows them to take a step back and say, hey, we can go best player available. Or if we really do like Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, or Justin Fields, we can go after them. It would instill much more confidence in this pick if the pick is Trey Lance or Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. It would instill much more confidence from my standpoint, if they were to take them now than if they were to take them before they traded Matthew Stafford. Because that means that they really actually like this guy and they weren't just forced to take a quarterback because that was the quarterback there and they need one. Because now they don't necessarily need one. They can roll with Jared Goff for a couple of years. They're not trying to win now. Like, they're not trying to, get the quarterback right now. And I know I've said that, hey, I'd rather get the quarterback first than build around him. Like, I know I said that. But at this point, like, it allows the Lions to be more flexible. Maybe we get Micah Parsons or Penei Sewell and anchor that offensive line, or rebuild that linebacking core. Like, it allows the Lions to have a ton of flexibility here. That's something they did not have before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm real high on Micah Parsons, and it was part of the reason that one of the past shows our last show, we talked about, would you take Trey Lance at 7? And I'm not completely sold on the idea because I'm not completely sold on Trey Lance, and I feel like at 7, to my knowledge of Trey Lance at this point, feels like we're forcing a QB when I feel like there's a lot of value on the board, like with guys like Micah Parsons and Penei Sewell. So, not saying that Trey Lance would be a bad pick at 7, but I'm happy that I don't feel like we're going to be forced into making that pick if we make that pick, it's because we actually view him as a really good player.
Absolutely. Like, there's a lot of value that can be had in this draft and just in drafts in general. And the Lions they hold the cards in their hand now. They can move up in the draft if they so please, or they can move up in next year's draft if they so please, or they can trade back with one of their picks and add more draft capital. Like, there's so much that they can do that gives them flexibility. And if Jared Goff ends up working out and you've got 5 first-round picks over the next 3 years, well, that's how you build a team. You've got a lot of opportunity to build a team around Jared Goff if he ends up working out.
I'm curious how much faith you have in Jared Goff working out, though.
God, that's such a good question.
Do you think that's like the more likely scenario, that it's actually Jared Goff? Not saying more likely scenario that we keep Jared Goff, but more likely scenario is that Jared Goff comes to Detroit and is actually ends up being a really good quarterback here, and we just don't end up needing to take a quarterback. You think it's more likely that this is just a 2-year thing, and then we're going to basically cut him and have our quarterback the future ready to go?
I'll give you a percentage of my faith in Jared Goff. I'll put it at about 35%.
Actually, I'm right there with you. I'll be honest with you, I am not the biggest Goff fan. I do think a lot of his production was a result of just how good of a situation he was in LA. So I've yet to be wowed by Goff's ability, especially considering the fact that he was a first overall pick. But I actually do hope he proves me wrong. I hope we don't need to take a quarterback, and I hope that Jared Goff can be our quarterback for the next 10 years. That'd be cool. That saves us a draft pick. So
absolutely. Like, it also gives them even more flexibility because maybe they don't need to go after, like, maybe there's a quarterback. Say the Lions are picking at 6 next year, and there's 2 quarterbacks available, and a team wants to go up and get them. All we'll move back to 9 or 10 and, add some more draft capital to build this roster with. I mean, it allows the Lions to not have to, if you don't have to take a quarterback in the draft, I mean, that's like, and you're still picking in the top 10, that's like best place to be. So here's how I want to do things here, because I am going to play a little bit of devil's advocate with this here, and I'm going to preface everything I say with, I love this trade. This is what I have I value this trade as the best possible offer on the board for Matthew Stafford. And I'm going to start things off by going through the list of other trade offers that the Lions had out there to them that's been reported. Bears and Jets checked in, didn't make an official offer. The 49ers apparently made no official offer. Denver Broncos looking at a pick swap. Patriots were offering a second-round pick and a player. Indianapolis didn't offer pick number 21, but offered multiple later-round picks, probably 3 or 4 day 2. The Washington football team offered number 19 and a 2021 third, which would have helped you more this year. And the Carolina Panthers offered pick number 8 and a later pick, which either could be a pick next year, like a day 2 pick next year, or day 2 pick this year. I don't know. There wasn't, exact reports there. So this is the only pick that got you 2 first-round picks, but you did have to take on a bad contract to get them. And could technically, say Jared Goff is like just good enough to like push outside the top 10. You could argue, but he's not great enough to like really build around. Like it could set your rebuild back. Like there's some gambling there. And in all honesty, Dan Campbell, based on reports, he is looking at Jared Goff as the quarterback of the future for this franchise. From what he said, that could just be coach speak. We don't know. But they are looking at Jared Goff as the long-term solution at quarterback, supposedly. Would you be happy with that?
And I'll add one more thing here. Also, per Peter King, there wasn't a mystery team that had 2 first-round picks on the table. We don't know who it was. It's not mentioned in Al Breer's reporting about who it was. So I am curious to see if we were to find out who that team was. I'm curious to see that. That would have been really interesting to see if it's a team that did have a top 10 pick this year. I think we could have had another first round, another top 10 pick this year's draft plus another first rounder. That would have been a really good offer, which possibly could have topped this one. But until we have any more details on that, I agree the Rams offer is the best offer on the board. I think the best part of it is we got them to up their offer. They only were offering 1 first round pick in the beginning. Now going back, what was your question again? Now I forgot.
Would you be happy with Jared Goff as the long-term solution for the Lions at quarterback?
I would be happy with it as long as I'm actually happy with what I'm seeing from on the field. I'm not just sitting here right now and say, this is our long-term guy, this is what I want. But I am willing to give him a shot. Now, what does that mean do I want to take a quarterback in this draft? I'm not opposed to us taking a quarterback in this draft, even with Goff there. Have a guy ready just in case Goff doesn't pan out over this next year or two. If he does, you have a really good trade asset. If he doesn't, you have your nice quarterback ready to go. But right now, I don't think Goff will be a long-term solution, but I'm willing to give him the opportunity to be one.
I'll agree with that, and I'll kind of be on board. If he earns it, then I have no reason to take it away from him, but he's got to earn it. I don't expect him to, based on what I've seen the last couple of years. So I'm going to play, like I said, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. Yep. And I already gave my little asterisk here that I still believe the Rams pick was the best. However, there's one trade in particular that in any other year I may look at as being a better trade offer, and it's the Carolina Panthers trade, and it's because it offers you a top 10 pick this year, along with another pick as well.
That's reportedly the one we were closest to accepting outside of
and it's possible that Stafford was the one who pushed the Lions away from that. There were reports that he broke the Panthers trade off. He straight up said, "I'm not going to the Patriots," which tells you how bad things were under Matt Patricia.
I do wonder if that Panthers offer was what got us a second pick from the Rams, or if that Rams second first round pick came in first.
That is entirely possible.
I wonder if we use that offer as leverage. Like, hey, we have a top 10 pick on the table. You need to give us another first round pick because your first round picks are in the back. So.
Right. Likely to be in the back. I mean, things could implode and they could end up as top 10s. Who knows?
True.
That would be best case scenario for the Lions.
Yeah.
But the reason I say that the Panthers pick in another year may be a better or Panthers offer may be a better offer is because the amount of flexibility that pick number 7 and pick number 8 would give you is more than anything else that the Rams gave you. And the value of the pick there is so incredibly high that you could, with pick number 7, pick number 8, you can move anywhere you want in the draft. Anywhere. Outside of in a weird year like this or in a year like this where there's a Trevor Lawrence type situation where there's a clear number 1 quarterback that they're going to be taking. There's no way you move them out of that spot. That's the one exception you can't get. So with that being said, the reason I don't think that this year in particular is the one year where I would take the future picks, it's because this year's scouting wise, this is a weird year. Mm-hmm. We have very little scouting to go off of with some of these guys. Like Trey Lance played 1 football game this year, I'm pretty sure. 1. You really don't know that much about him. The physical tools and
that's why
what
I'm
we
so
saw in years
afraid of him.
past, the mobility, that's exactly the type of quarterback Dan Campbell wants. But we don't know that much about him. Mm-hmm. And we don't know the level of there's not much level of competition that he's gone against. So there's a huge wild card. He wouldn't be ready to start this year regardless. So, but say there wasn't a COVID year and we had normal scouting. 2 top 10 picks is such an incredibly high valued asset to have versus picks that are probably going to be 25 or later that don't carry anywhere near the value to move or at pick value. I went through drafts, 2000 drafts in first round drafts in 2010 to 2020. I went through all of them, and from picks 25 to 32, there were 15 guys. Well, 17, but I'm going to take a couple off because they were very fringe that I can honestly say had very good careers or really good careers. Mm-hmm. Were guys that are big names or recognizable names. Some of them were multiple All-Pros. One of them in particular, Lamar Jackson, won an MVP. However, he took a huge step down this year to where he wasn't even a top 10 quarterback and may not be the quarterback of the future for the Ravens. We don't know. Brandon Ayuk was part of that list. And then there were names like, I think it's Cameron Hayward, that the pass rusher that was just a monster. It is a monster. There's names all over the spectrum there. But 15 out of a possible 70 picks, really, they got right. So that tells you that there's not as much value at the back end of the first round, and definitely not as much value at the back end of the first round as there is in the top 10. I would take 1 top 10 pick now over 2 picks in the back end of the first. There's more value there. That's why teams do end up trading 2 picks at the back end of the first to get into the top 10. That's normally what it costs you. And 2 top 10 picks also gives you the flexibility to move in to the top 5 as well, which you wouldn't have that ability if you had, say, pick 7 or 8 and pick 27. That ain't enough to get you into the top 5. It would probably cost you another first-round pick to get into the top 5 at that point. So you don't have as much flexibility there without the 2 top 10 picks. So, but again, in this year in particular, I'm not as wanting to go for another top 10 pick this year because I just don't know. We don't know enough about these guys. Even guys that we think are for sure things. Micah Parsons is a great example. We think he is far and away the best linebacker in this draft. Think he's going to be a stud in the NFL, and he probably will be. But again, he only played a Big Ten schedule this year, and the Big Ten was trash for the most part. So is he really as good as we think he is? There's question marks around guys like that where in most years, there wouldn't be any question marks there. Now, sure, there's sure thing prospects in this draft. Penei Sewell is an example of a guy that if he doesn't work out in the NFL, then I will never look at another offensive lineman and give my 2 cents because I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. Because that guy looks more of a sure thing than any lineman I've ever seen.
But yeah, the receivers, you have some high-end receivers, but there's big knocks on all of them right now. You got Devontae Smith and his size. You got Jamar Chase and his drop in production. You got there's Justin Fields, the second biggest quarterback name there. Yes, on paper, and he checks all the boxes, but coming from the Ohio State system, that's not a product of just this unknown draft, but that's just in general what this draft is. There's just a lot of unknowns, a lot of the top guys. So it's more than just a weird year. It's just there's also the fact that just so happens that a lot of the guys in the top of this draft do have a lot of unknowns with them.
Now, I will say that Justin Fields, whereas I've been wishy-washy on him myself, I do think he's an elite level prospect, and I do think he is the best quarterback prospect over the next 2 years, probably outside of Trevor Lawrence.
I'll say he's the best quarterback prospect I've seen out of Ohio State in
ever
recent memory,
ever
at least. Yeah.
Ever. You ain't ever seen a quarterback like Justin Fields at Ohio State. But like, if you could tell me that if I could have gotten pick number 7 or pick number 8 and package 7 and 8 to move up into the top 5 to guarantee myself Justin Fields over the opportunity to maybe package or to get a quarterback at number 7 or number 6 next year, which would probably be the third quarterback off the board, that's another reason why the Panthers trade could be a better trade. It helps you more right now. It's like the old saying, 1 in the hand is better than 2 in the bush or whatever it is. I think that's what the saying is. Like, it's knowing what you can get now is better than not knowing what you could possibly get later. And granted, that's still not like Justin Fields still is not a sure thing. We just believe he's going to be. We already have that player targeted versus next year. We don't know what the hell could happen.
Well, I'll argue that I do think that having that what we got still provides an insane amount of flexibility because you are still talking about two first round picks as opposed to 1. So
not enough flexibility to get you into the top 5 though. Unless you packaged all 3 of them together, which then at that point is it really worth it?
Well, but you're getting into the same spot, right? You have your 2 top 10 picks, or you have your top 10 pick plus the 2 later Rams picks. It still gets you in the same spot in most cases.
It does. However, one nets you Justin Fields, the other one nets you probably a lesser prospect.
We'll see. Yeah, we don't know what's going on there. And then the other thing is, I do feel there's a lot of value in the back of the first round of the NFL draft too. Because
I just gave you a stat that proved that wrong. Like there's a ton of missed picks there.
Yeah, there's mixed picks, but I'm saying in terms of the value that's on the board, that's available, there's still a ton of value available. If you just take the top half of the second round, just this past year, you have T. Higgins, DeAndre Swift.
Okay, but
you got Jonathan Taylor, you got Anton Winfield.
The thing is those weren't guys that are looked at being taken in the first round. Like you have to, like you're speaking in hindsight here. We don't have the luxury of hindsight on draft day. We don't have that luxury. We have what we are scouted, what we have scouted, what we know about these guys or what we think we know about these guys. Sure, we know now that there was a ton of value in Chase Claypool in the second round or DK Metcalf in the second round. Like we know there was a ton of value there. Did we on draft day? No. We thought DK Metcalf didn't know how to run routes. We thought the guy was nothing more than an athletic freak of nature. We thought he was going to be a bust. A lot of people did. So on draft day, if you had taken him in the first round, there's a lot of people who would have thought you reached. So you can't really speak out of hindsight here. You got to speak out of what we know on draft day.
Well, aren't we technically speaking out of hindsight when we're looking back at picks and saying who went where between 25 and 32? It's still hindsight, isn't it?
Yes and no, but that's I'm speaking on the point of hindsight where like you miss a lot more picks in 25 to 32 than you do in 1 through 15. That's what I'm getting at here, especially 1 through 10. There's a lot more missed picks in the back end of the first than there are in the top of the first when you could have gotten the top of the first here. You could have given yourself more of a guarantee.
It comes down to your college scouting department, and hopefully we've improved in that area from the guys we've brought in. But
yes, obviously you'd hope that as well.
All I'm saying, the value is there. It's just you got to take advantage of it.
It's far more of a risk at that with the late round pick than
naturally
in the top of the draft, which you could have gotten yourself 2 sure thing studs or expected sure thing studs over 1 stud and something you hope to be a good player in your rotation. That's where the value differs there. And also the 2 top 10 picks gives you a lot more trade bait than a top 10 and, a 28 or 27, which you expect.
Who are we kidding? We're talking about a team that took a cornerback in number 3.
Different regime, different time.
Regime. Let's put that behind us.
That's close the pages, close the book on that. That whole situation's done. But again, that's my whole point with this, and that's why in other years,
picks, cornerback and tight end.
I know. What a waste. That guy should never work in another front office ever again in his life. But that's my point. In another year, I may say, okay, maybe we should have gotten the top 10 pick this year that we know what it is. We're not having to worry about, okay, is it going to be pick number 22 or is it going to be pick number 32? We don't know. We know what we're getting here now at number 8. We know what's going to be there at number 8. Do we like what we see there? So that's where I'm saying that may have been a better offer because of that. It's better to know than not know.
So then I guess here's my question to you. If let's say you're sitting at we're sitting at 7, and let's say Trevor Lawrence goes number 1, and you're looking at number 2. Do you think, and do you have reason to believe that Justin Fields is going 2, or maybe 3, and you need to jump to 2 to get him? Do you think that our number 7 and the 2 Rams picks would be enough to move up to number 3, let's say?
Absolutely not.
Or 2 to get Justin
Absolutely
Fields?
Not. 2 late first-round picks and your top 10 pick to jump up to number 2 or number 3? No, I do not. I think it would take your pick this year, the Rams pick next year, and your pick next year to move up. Not the Rams pick in 2023. Because remember, that's not next year's pick. That's the following year.
Yeah.
It would take your pick next year and the Rams pick next year or the Rams pick the year following. It would take 2 picks that would likely be in the top 10. Not just 1. 2. And that's where I go back to 2 top 10 picks this year probably does get you up that high. So, but again, it also depends on how you value Justin Fields. But again, though, with the scouting the way it was this year, I think they made the right move by not necessarily punting on this year's draft, but pushing back a little bit. And honestly, the one strategy that should be taken with this year's draft is get as much draft capital on day 2 as you possibly can. Because the names on day 2, oh man, do they look good. And just going through recent drafts, like I went through the drafts from 2016 to 2020. I looked at just second and third round picks. Look at the wide receiver names that come out of this second and third round.
Oh yeah.
This actually leads me into my next topic of what to do with Kenny Golladay and why not to re-sign him. Mm-hmm. But names to look at in second and third round at just wide receiver. Just wide receiver. Now, quarterback's a different story. But last year, T. Higgins picked 33 for the Bengals. Michael Pittman Jr. picked 34 for the Colts. Laviska Shenault, nice little two-way piece for the Jags, pick number 42. Chase Claypool, pick number 49 for the Steelers. Dude's a stud in the red zone. 2019, Deebo Samuel, pick 36 for the Niners. A.J. Brown, pick 51 for the Titans. McCole Hardman, 56 for the Chiefs. DK Metcalf, 64 for the Seahawks. Terry McLaurin, 76, third round for the Washington football team. 2018, Cortland Sutton, Christian Kirk, DJ Chark, Michael Gallup. 2017, Curtis Samuel, Juju Smith-Schuster, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, Kenny Galladay. 2016, Sterling Shepard, Michael Thomas, Tyler Boyd. Like, look at all those names. We got the point. Look at all those names in the second and third round. And this year in particular is an even bigger reason to go after second and third round picks because there's even more unknowns. There's so much more value that is probably there in the second and third round that scouts have no idea about because they didn't get to see them play enough.
Yeah.
Because of COVID. So this year in particular, they made the right decision because this year's not the year to get first round picks. This year's the year to get second and third round picks. Next year's the year for first round picks. The year after that's the year for first round picks. They made the right move here. They thought smartly and understood the situation in the here and now with this year's draft versus next year's draft. They did the right thing in my mind.
I do find it interesting though. Like you look at this year, I remember it was the same case the year Corey Davis got drafted. I think that was 2017. But like the number 1 wide receiver off the board is like less productive than like the next 10 guys after him. Like, I don't know if that's like GM's getting tunnel vision at the skill positions. Like this is the top guy on the board. This is who we take, and not actually properly scouting, or if we're just some curse of being the top guy. I don't know, but. Like Henry Ruggs goes, and then you have a string of like 10 guys that were all really productive this year of wide receivers specifically.
I mean, I'm not saying Henry Ruggs is a bust. Like I still think he could be really good.
I just think he's in a really shitty situation right now.
I mean, the Raiders are better than we thought they were going to be.
Yeah,
but their defense is abysmal.
Defense is abysmal. It's all about the running game. If it weren't for Josh Jacobs, that team would be nothing. I think. Well, Darren Waller, but
I mean, I was going to say Derek Carr had a little bit better of a year than we thought too. Let's be real.
But I do think a lot of the reason that Henry Ruggs hasn't been as good as we thought he was going to be is because of Derek Carr. But anyway, that's a completely different argument for a different day.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like, it could have been a better offer in other years for the Panthers, but this year in particular, this was the right move to make. Like, this was the best possible trade.
It's just like the NBA draft this past year when we didn't have a March Madness which ends up being like a big value gauge for a lot of these prospects. And you had a lot of good names going in the late first round, like that actually have been productive so far this year.
More productive than some of the names at the top. But so moving on now and looking at like the timeline of the Lions obviously have a big decision to make on a couple of guys in the offseason. That's Romeo Okwara and Kenny Golladay. Romeo Okwara, like that's a guy, if I was to pick one that I could only keep one, it would be Romeo Okwara. Pass rushing is extremely important. Two, Kenny Golladay is going to be way too much money for what he probably is. And like he may or may not be a number one receiver. He may or may not be that guy. He's going to be very expensive. And honestly, looking at the free agent market, plus I just listed off a whole list of names in the second and third round in recent years at wide receiver alone that you could take, be a hell of a lot cheaper, and potentially get equal value out of. And then with some of those names, a lot more value out of. But names in free agent market, Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, like those guys probably going to be equal, if not more expensive than Kenny Golladay, but are probably better options. Curtis Samuel, great year this year. Will Fuller, Juju Smith-Schuster, there's some risk involved with that one. Corey Davis is a name I really like for the Lions because one, hometown guy. Two, he had a really solid year this year, and I think he's shown a lot of potential to be a true number one. Guys you could take some shots on are Josh Reynolds, Keelan Cole, Rashard Higgins. That's a guy I think could potentially break out in the right situation. D.D. Westbrook. Like, those guys are going to be dirt cheap in comparison to Kenny Golladay. So there's guys out there on the free agent market, not even to mention the draft, which you have more capital in now, to replace them. So why even bother giving this guy $20 million a year when you can get, I mean, frankly, you could put anybody there and you get equal value to what he gave you this year. Granted, he was hurt, for pennies on the dollar. So I love you, Kenny Golladay. I think you've been a great player, and I think you are a great player, but see ya. I have no reason to re-sign you. You don't fit. Like, we're not trying to win in the next couple of years. We're rebuilding. Granted, I don't mind a 30 and 31-year-old receiver in the last couple of years of his deal. Like, that's okay. But either way, no need for you in the next couple of years. We can get help there elsewhere.
I'm right there with you. He doesn't necessarily fit our timeline anymore with the direction this team just took this past month or so. And not to mention, if you do end up losing to free agency, you do get a compensatory third-round pick, which I do believe is right around the range of what you probably get from if you were to, let's say, do a sign and trade for him.
Yes and no. I think you could at least squeak out a second-round pick for him.
You might be able to.
I mean, looking at what the Cowboys gave up for Amari Cooper, granted, Cooper is a better receiver, but he was very up and down. But I believe
I prefer to look at what the Texans gave up for DeAndre, or what the Cardinals gave up for DeAndre Hopkins. Okay?
Well, Bill O'Brien's an idiot. So again, we're looking at two extremes. We're looking at two extremes here. Let's go somewhere in the middle. So we're probably looking around a second-round pick.
Yeah. But either way, yeah, I agree. At this point, at this stage of what the Lions are at, the direction they're going, it just doesn't make much sense to throw a ton of money at Kenny Golladay right now. I'm completely okay with letting him walk, and I'm almost a proponent of it at this point.
I mean, yeah.
And I'll be honest, I don't think he wants to come back at this. I don't think he's going to want to be part of a rebuild.
That's the other added aspect of this is like he doesn't really seem to want to be here. So you also take out the headache in the locker room there. So I just think that like I honestly have a lot of trust in what the Lions front office is doing, and I in all reality I probably shouldn't because it's the Lions, but like I for once see a Lions organization have a direction that's new and fresh from the get-go. Like Bob Quinn kept Jim Caldwell and kept a lot of the same things, and it just didn't work out. And like Martin Mayhew, same deal. There was a lot of holdover and a lot of, again, it just was same old trick and pony. This one seems just like a Band-Aid was ripped off, and now we're walking in a new direction, and it's something that's completely our own and different.
Yeah, it feels different, doesn't it?
It does. It actually feels different.
Like
And I know I probably said that about Bob Quinn, but this time it actually does. I swear.
No, I remember with Bob Quinn, nothing felt different. It was just Lions fans really hoping the Patriot way was a real thing.
Right.
Now we're finding out it's not.
Yes, true. But I like that they're doing things their own way. I like that they have. Like, it feels like they have a read on the pulse. Like, it feels like they have a, like, they can see what's actually going on here. Like, this is not the year to get your first round picks. Next year is, and the year after. Like, this is the year you want to maybe get day 2 and day 3 picks for the value for it because they're cheaper. You can, get more value there for the cost. Like it seems like there's a lot of people that know what the hell they're doing in this front office for the first time in a long time.
Not to divert here, but really interesting breaking news I do think is somewhat relevant is apparently the inklings of a trade are in place for Deshaun Watson, and looks like the Raiders are going to be involved, and they're taking calls for Derek Carr to try to move him, making this a possible 3-team deal. Which the reason I bring this up is because obviously I do feel like the Stafford trade kind of set the market for Deshaun Watson, and I do believe Deshaun Watson is going to get more.
Yes,
going
add
to
1 or 2
more
first-round picks through that trade.
It doesn't look like, so why bring this up? It doesn't look like the Texans are going to be taking Derek Carr from the Raiders, meaning I'm very curious just how much draft capital Deshaun Watson is going to command without actually getting a quarterback in return.
I'm probably guessing it's going to cost in somewhere in the value of at least 3 first-round picks, probably somewhere in the value of 4. Like, say the Dolphins are involved. You're looking at probably Tua and 2 first-round picks, at least. There's
Which at that point, could the play for the Texans be to actually get a ton of draft capital and use it to move up to number 2 and grab Fields?
It could be, but again, if you have Tua, are you moving up to number 2 to get Fields?
Well, yeah, that's assuming if they got Tua, then that's different.
Right.
Yeah.
Then at that point, they're probably sitting pat and going after like Penei Sewell to protect Tua. But either way, it obviously you're going to get a much larger return for Deshaun Watson than you got from Matthew Stafford, and for good reason. But it is interesting that Stafford cost 2 first-round picks, so Deshaun Watson's probably going to cost 3 or 4 because where I was saying Stafford cost 1 first-round pick, and what's likely, Watson costs 3. Like, that's starting point for Watson.
Yeah.
So now it's probably, okay, he costs 4 first-round picks.
Yeah, because the reason I bring this up is there a deal for Watson that would change your perspective on the Stafford deal that would make you suddenly think we didn't get enough?
No,
is there?
Because I think we exceeded Stafford value. To be honest with you,
like if Watson somehow commanded 5 first-round picks, do you suddenly think, all right, maybe we could have got an extra first-round pick in there for Stafford?
No, I don't. Because just looking at what the other offers were, no. I think you're talking 2 different tiers of quarterback. You're talking about a 33-year-old quarterback who's injured a lot versus a 26-year-old quarterback who is an MVP candidate year in and year out. So no, I don't think there's any correlation there. I think you got more than what anybody expected for Stafford. Granted, he did have to take on a bad contract to do it, but that bad contract could actually turn out to be all right if things go well.
Would you have Derek Carr or Jared Goff?
Jared Goff.
Agreed.
I think Derek Carr sucks.
I agree with that too.
And I'm not saying that Jared Goff is any great elite quarterback, but Derek Carr sucks. Now, if you ask me if I would rather have Ryan Tannehill or Jared Goff, I'd take Tannehill all day.
It's funny you bring up Ryan Tannehill. My dad actually called me when this trade happened, and he was basically saying how he was excited about Goff because of how many comparisons he hears to Ryan Tannehill. And exactly. And I was like, well, here's the thing. We don't have Derrick Henry. You can compare to Ryan Tannehill all you want.
I mean, yes, you're right. However, again, I still think Ryan Tannehill is a legitimate good quarterback. I think he just needed a change of scenery. He was wasting in Miami. But, yeah, I do think the presence of Derrick Henry sure helps out a quarterback. No doubt. No doubt. Anything else to add?
That's it for me on the Lions front, and I don't even know if the Pistons are going to play anytime soon after all those.
No, they've been riddled with COVID. Supposedly, they're supposed to play tonight against Utah. Yeah. Supposedly, I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not, but we'll find out.
Yeah, so they had one positive / inconclusive test, and when they were supposed to play against the Nuggets, they wouldn't say who it was, but that game would end up getting postponed. And now the Jazz game, the line's now at minus 12.5, which tells you the Pistons are, if they're playing, are probably playing shorthanded.
Yikes. Okay. So, yikes. So now, the COVID bug that has riddled its way through the Red Wings locker room has now made its way to the Pistons locker room. Nice.
That is correct, sir.
Fun. All right. Good to know that the Detroit teams are staying safe.
Yep.
Anyways, though, that is going to call it for this week, guys. We thank you for listening. We're curious to hear your thoughts on the Stafford trade as well. Hit us up on Twitter at Real Fan Report. Andrew, thank you for joining me. Thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast. Thank you to you guys for listening. We will catch you guys next week. This has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
For fans.
We'll catch you guys next week. Thank you again. Have a good one. Peace out.
Peace.